overnight climb to fame from an unfortunate event, really, honestly, right? I mean,
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about the event. So, just walk us through what happened.
Okay, so check it. I was minding my business. I had got on a like a 7 a.m. flight, so I was already tired and I was running late. I wonder why. I was just running late. So I get on the flight and the flight attendant said that they can't help us because of COVID, so they couldn't help us with our bags and stuff. Like, pretty much put your stuff in the overhead bins by yourself. And this older white lady was like struggling to put her bag up over the overhead. So I just helped her. Her and another passenger helped her as well, who was black as well. And I just sat down and she sat down like right in the same row with me and then got up and went, I guess, to the bathroom because that's the only place you could go in the back of the plane. And when she came back, she had a pin that was like American flag on one side and a Blue Lives Matter flag joined. She had it on her left hand side for me to see from where I was sitting, and then she took her American flag mask and flipped it, and it was a Blue Lives Matter mask, and she put it on, and I peeped it all. I'm like, okay, cool. But I was like, I just helped this lady, and she over here got a Blue Lives Matter mask, and I had put it on my snap.
But was that the point where you were like? So what was your reaction when she flipped the mask to the Blue Lives Matter?
I was like, that was unnecessary. She could have
Okay.
just kept her American flag mask and kept it pushing. First off,
But you still didn't say anything to her at that point.
Nah,
Okay.
I didn't say anything to her. Nope, because if she want to flip her mask and have Corona on the other side, that's her business. So she starts to so I'm looking this way, but I can feel her looking at me. So I'm just pretending like I'm on my phone, just waiting for us to take off. And she first starts the conversation off like, oh, I didn't know churches made masks. Because my mask was a black mask that said Evolve Church. And I said, yeah, they make masks. And she was like, oh, where's that church? And I'm like, it's in Milwaukee. And she was like, okay. And she was like, well, this is my mask, and I wear it in support of the police officers. And then she said, like, Blue Lives Matter or something like that. And I was just like, okay. And I just turned to her and I was like, when you say Blue Lives Matter, that's very offensive because that whole statement only came out of when black people started saying like, okay, we do not appreciate and we're not going to stand for the discrimination of just racial injustice and the police brutality of our men, our children, our women. So to say Blue Lives Matter is just a slap in the face. And at the end of the day, a blue life doesn't exist. Like the lives of the officers exist and they do matter. I have officers in my family as well, and they're black. But that is an occupation to be a police officer. Like my occupation is a teacher. But when she met me, she didn't know I was a PhD candidate. She doesn't know that I own a business. She didn't know that I was a teacher. She didn't know any of these things. She didn't know my background. But one thing she did know was that I was black. And one thing I feel like she did know is that me being black and her saying she supports the cops was going to, in one way, shape, or form, irritate me or be a problem for me, because she could have just sat there with her American mask and just mind her business.
So at what point did the situation escalate?
Well, it never escalated for me, but it escalated for those around me. So she continued. So after when I explained about the blue lives and stuff, she said like, well, I just want to point this out that, America is the best place for black people. And honestly, the only reason why you're here is because West Africans sold the most slaves. And I'm like, well, you cannot compare regular slavery to chattel slavery. Like it's two different. It's a difference, and both are wrong, but it's a complete difference from this is a casualty or this is a consequence of war versus we just gonna monopolize the whole world and do this and bring everybody from one, not even tribe to tribe, but one continent to a whole nother continent.
And enslave their entire generations after that. I mean, that's the thing about chattel slavery is that it doesn't end. There's no end to it. If you're in chattel slavery, your children's children's children will be slaves.
Yep.
Which is different than the different types of historical slavery that
Mhm.
we've seen when you've enslaved or your tribe gets defeated by another tribe
Mhm.
and they take in your people, enslave that first generation, and even then they even offer them to integrate into their society, right?
Mhm.
And then to marry into that family, and now they're a part of that tribe now.
Mhm.
That's different than what we're talking about.
Yep. So she just made that statement. She also said that, America's the best place for anybody, especially Black people, because they can pull themselves up by their bootstraps. I had to explain how we don't even have boots. That we got to go buy the boots ourselves. But she made a lot of comments. So I did ask her, I was like, okay, so with this context, because she just kept comparing experiences as if I had the same privileges as her. And I'm like, well, you seem about my grandmother's age. Have you ever had to get food from the back of a building? Have you ever had to pick cotton? Have you ever had a mother or a father or a grandfather born on a plantation or still live in the plantation? Like, have you had these disadvantages because of your skin? No, I haven't, but I just feel that, a lot of people need to understand that racism, and she did make the comment that racism is a facade. I don't know. The lady was ignorant, to say the least. And the people in front and behind me started to curse at her and like asked her.
And were these other Black people, white? Not to make it about race, but I just want to kind of get a better understanding of the demographics of the people who are watching this.
So in front of me was a white woman.
Okay.
And she definitely went in. She turned around and got out her seat like, "Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?" Just went in on her. And then the people like 2 rows behind me were a Black family, and then across from us was a Black family. And then the row right behind me was a white family. So when that started to like get very like just hyped up and lit, the flight attendants came over and asked like if, well, before they saw the discomfort, and the flight attendant Rachel had asked
discomfort for you.
Yeah, for me. So Rachel just was like, she just kind of like asked me if I was okay from
and
a
Rachel
distance.
is the flight attendant. I just want to make sure everyone's following.
Yep, flight attendant of Delta. And I was like, no, I'm okay, because I was having a conversation. And then when it got lit and she started saying all this crazy stuff about slavery and about the Black experience, they were just 2 of them. So Rachel, and I don't remember the other flight attendant's name, but they both came over and it was like, "Is everything okay?" They addressed me and asked me if everything was okay, if I was okay. Offered to move her, and I said no, it was fine. Because at that point, I'm just like, look, I just want to get off this flight.
I want to go to my march.
I want to go to my march.
You're flying to DC to participate in the march, right?
Yeah, the commitment march.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, I just want to get to where I need to go. And I was super tired. So I'm like, I don't know. I was at peace enough to know that I knew I was safe, but I also knew like it's always an instance where things can go left for us even when we're not in the wrong. So I'm like, I don't want to make it a bigger deal at all. I just want to get off this flight. So,
and isn't that unfortunate? Not to cut you off, but isn't that unfortunate about being Black in America? Is like you kind of have to get used to being abused.
Yep.
You know, it's like you can't speak out and say anything about it because you're afraid that people are going to feel like it's your fault or you did something to incite the abuse.
Yep.
Right?
Like, or I did something to just hype it up more. And then just being a Black woman, that stereotype that I'm angry or I over exaggerate, it's just like draining. Even when she purposely started this conversation and tried to drag it on. Now, when the white lady cussed her out, the old lady, the lady in front cussed my passenger out or whatever she was, cussed her out. She took out her Sudoku and shut her mouth for the rest of the flight. And she didn't say anything else. And when she needed to get help with her bags, ain't none of us help her. She had to figure it out herself. Like, that was that. But once she got off the flight, the flight attendants pulled me aside and they also just asked me like, what happened? And was I okay? I explained to them what she said, what they were doing. They was like, we want you to know that us as like people do not go for this like discrimination and stuff,
Right.
and neither does Delta, and we're gonna actually handle this. So I'm like, okay, thank you. So they walked me to baggage claim as we were talking and stuff, and they was just like, no, that's not cool. Like Rachel pulled out her phone. She was like, what seat were you in? Because that wasn't originally my seat. Like where I had sat, I always like to sit by the window. Where I sat was her seat or something like that. Like I was supposed to be in the middle, but because Delta's doing that whole like flip,
Social distance thing.
yeah.
And yeah.
So I had ended up having a new seat. So they was just like, okay, we got your seat. We got hers. Like, she's not going to fly no more. And I just went about my day. I'm like, okay, that was crazy. I just took it as that was crazy.
How long was the flight?
I want to say from Minneapolis to DC, I think it's like 4 hours.
So 4 hours is being in just pure discomfort.
Yep. And I just was like,
Wow.
I just want my juice and these stale cookies. No, they're not stale, but those little graham crackers. And I just wanted to get off my flight. So when they said that, I'm like, okay, whatever. They said that I handle it. I didn't go back to Delta. I didn't check in with anybody. I really kind of forgot about it until I was getting on my, well, I didn't forget about it, but I let it go. So when we got on our flight to go back from DC to Minneapolis, my ticket had showed that I had got upgraded to business class, but I just thought that was God, and it still is God. But I was like, oh snap, they made a mistake, and I'm not gonna tell nobody because I had bought my granny's flight and my aunt's flight, so I'm like,
you're already at like 1500s, and you flew them first class, right, or business class?
Business class, both ways.
Yeah. So you're like, oh, I'm gonna take this blessing.
I'm like, I would just take this one because I had rolled basic for that conversation I had. So I'm like, oh, so I get some luxury? Okay, cool. I ain't gonna say nothing. And I'm just sitting in the row by myself by the window. And the flight attendant comes up and she said, hi, are you Miss Poe? And I'm like, yeah, like, yeah.
I would have said it depends.
And yeah, I was thinking that. I was like, yeah. And she had this big old red bag. And I'm like, what is this? So, you know, my grandma taught me good manners. I read the card and it was like, Delta said like, they apologized for the experience that I had on the flight on the way to DC from Minneapolis and that they handled it and all that stuff. And I had got my Delta Black Lives Matter pin that only Delta staff has. So, no, you cannot buy it. Does not matter if you got Jay-Z money. You can't buy it. But I got it. And I got a Delta journal, Delta pen, a Delta business card holder, which I really need. Yeah, it was just really thoughtful. I'm like, dang, like y'all, that's really nice. Like that's lit. And then they also let me know like she's off of their flying approved flying list. And I'm like, dang, like that was very major for a major company to make that statement, because honestly, a lot of these major
Delta is like the major airline. Like when you think
I don't
of
fly nothing else.
Yeah, but Delta, exactly. I mean, a lot of people just fly Delta. I mean, the other ones are, you know, significant, but I mean, Delta.
I don't fly. Before this, I did not fly nothing else but Delta. I didn't care how much I had to pay. Like I'm so for the convenience, safety, and comfort. So after, you know, this incident, I'm like, okay, now y'all really gonna have my money now, because now I know that me and my people can fly safely. Like, and if it is a situation, you're going to, you know, give a consequence to the person who is at fault. So I really like that. And then, you know, Delta commented on my page.
And this is on the Facebook post that went viral.
They commented on my Facebook post. They was like, they said, when we say you matter, we mean, when we say Black Lives Matter, we mean that, and you mean, and you matter to us, Demetria. So I was like,
how sweet.